forwarded me a plan revised on 10/5/16, which illustrated 2 substantive changes to their site design in reaction to my and other individuals' comments and concerns regarding potential damage to the abutters' trees. They moved the retaining wall, which had been proposed immediately adjacent to the long southerly border of the applicant's property, 8 feet to the north, so that the back of the wall is now proposed to be 10 feet from the property line. And they proposed new trees proposed near the property line. They replaced new trees proposed near the property line with shrubs, which would have smaller root balls. In doing so, it is my opinion that the potential danger to trees on a butter's property has now been minimized to an extent that I'm comfortable with this project proceeding, provided the following conditions are imposed by the ZBA. 1, establish a limit of work line on the property that can be inspected and approved by the ZBA prior to construction, and that the limit of work line be a physical barrier on the site, such as a snow fence or temporary chain link fence. 2, do no work of any kind outside the limit of work above or below ground. 3, excavate for retaining wall footings using an air spade, either directly by or under the guidance of a certified arborist. The air spade should be used to determine and define the limit of excavation. 4, perform any root pruning of abutters' trees if necessary, either directly by or under the guidance of the arborist. 5, protect, as directed by the arborist, exposed roots while constructing the retaining wall and backfilling behind it. 6, use an air spade to excavate for plant pits for any shrubs proposed within 10 feet of the property line or existing trees abutting. In the event roots are encountered, adjust planting locations in the field to minimize root distance. That letter had a conflict that I answered with a clarification letter. The conflict was condition 2 said do no work of any kind outside the limit of work above or below ground. Number 6 said use an air spade to excavate for plant pits for any shrubs proposed within the 10-foot property line where existing trees abutted. My clarification letter said yesterday, and this was on the 18th of October, I requested a revision to the drawings which the applicant has accepted and implemented on their plans dated 18 October 2016. The limit of work line shown on previous plans has been relabeled the limit of grading. There will be some new shrubs installed outside the limit of grading, the procedures for which will be governed by condition number 6 of my previous letter. The installation of these shrubs outside the limit of grading will benefit the abutters by providing additional screening between the abutters and the new development, and if installed as per condition 6, disturbance to the root systems of abutters' trees will be minimal and, in my professional opinion, acceptable. Should I entertain questions?
Yes, I don't know if he saw the
Yeah, I forwarded those.
Oh, okay. Could you respond then to, I guess, Bartlett trees or something?
I cannot. They mentioned potential damage to 18 trees, and until I see where these trees are,
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to make any comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to move on?
Do you?
All right.
Just a question, when you say minimize the likelihood of damage, do you have any quantification of that?
Yes. A previous statement was made in an earlier meeting that there would be severe damage to any tree if the roots are disturbed within the drip line of the tree, drip line being the edge of the foliage crown. It's standard practice in the transplantation of trees.
Yeah, just looking for a number. It's okay.
I'm not giving you a number.
Okay, that's okay. If you want to give me a number, that's-
I'd like to actually present several exhibits to the board. These are photographs of 3 trees that were transplanted at an unusually large size. And in all 3 cases, the root ball is less than half the width of the foliage crown. So severe disturbance to the tree roots of a tree is still possible while keeping the tree healthy. And I wanted to make that point because it's in conflict with the point that was made in an earlier meeting.
Another quick question. People are talking, you and the arborist, we're talking about the damage to the trees from cutting out roots and disrupting the roots. Has anybody considered damage to the tree from pruning?
Pruning of the foliage crown?
Yes, pruning of the tree.
Um,
Have you?
There wouldn't be any.
Okay, there wouldn't be
pruning of
any.
the Foliage
You-
crown during
You didn't see
construction.
any trimming of trees necessary over the property?
I noted in my table that some pruning is necessary for clearance.
And there was no damage to,
There's no
no risk of damage
No
to the
risk
tree
of
from
damage
pruning?
to the trees from
It
pruning.
Okay.
it might improve the health of the trees. It would certainly improve the appearance of some of the trees.
In
Okay,
some
that's
cases-
far different than we were told by our arborist expert from Bartlett. I represent the ownership of 261 Miriam. I hear a lot of talk, thankfully so, about the trees up the hill around the retaining wall, but there's a whole forest of trees along 261 Miriam, and many of those trees provide a canopy over 11 Hallett, and I can't imagine those won't have to be trimmed because they'll hang straight over the houses.
Could you
And
point to them on the plan?
Yeah, I can.
yeah, and they've been identified at risk, but at risk from
They're right here.
root issues, but
Right
they're
here.
also at risk from
And up
pruning.
top, it's quite
The
clear
one
on
in
the
the-
plan
in
where
the
they are.
red.
And some of these trees come up on the property line, but like
Let
80%.
him, Jerry, so
Okay.
you haven't considered, it's all right, we don't have to go on and on about it.
I haven't
just-
considered it, but.
Okay, great, that's good.
Pruning of the foliage crown can
No.
be,
Up to half of the trees will have to be, some of the trees up to half of the crown will have to be trimmed back, in our opinion. So that's okay, you just haven't considered it, got it.
Yes.
It's just a small matter, but you stipulated that the line be marked with either a snow fence or a chain link. For the neighbor's sake, the chain link is highly offensive, and it can be there for a long period of time, so we really make a strong, strong appeal that you not do that unless it's absolutely necessary.
chain link can be made more visually palatable with certain things added to it.
What are we
And there
talking?
are other types of fences that.
It's just not a chain link fence tab,
This
so
is the
no.
work limit. It's
If
just
we
the
can
limit
avoid
of
it,
work
thank you
time.
very much.
I don't know what we're talking about.
Do you want to hear?
Yeah, sure. I think just leave it as that.
It's a quick one.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused. I've heard Mr. Hammer describe the limit of work as something that it's a line in the sand that beyond the limit of work, there can be no construction activity at all. And now we have this new term, limit of grading, so I'm a little confused about that. And I think I've not heard that term before, and I've not seen it on the site plan.
May I speak to that?
Yes.
It's common practice in the construction industry for a limit of work to be prepared by a civil engineer, and the intent of the limit of work is to show a limit of utility trenching and excavation. It is very common for people in my profession, landscape architecture, to have plantings that extend past the limit of work. I specifically asked, after I heard the issues with this specific project, to have the applicant change the name limit of work to limit of grading, so that a limit of excavation would be finely drawn without any concern about interpretation. And that the limit of work could also be included that would show all activity, including landscape. So that was the reason for that clarification.
But if the limit of work includes all construction activity, removing trees and planting trees is construction activity. And so as we see on the plan, they're putting, on the landscape plan, they're putting trees along the property line. And we happen to know that there's about 77 trees on the developing site that are within 5 feet of the property line. And so it strikes me that in this instance, the limit of work or the limit of grading is really not the limit of construction. If you call digging 30-inch deep, digging 30-inch deep holes to plant trees, or to remove trees in their roots, it really should be the property line is the limit of work in many places here. It's just a clarification, I think that's.
Yeah, maybe we can ask Mr.
May I again?
Yeah.
My condition 6 of my memo says that any excavation for plants that occurs within 10 feet of the property line be done with an air spade. For those of you not familiar with the term, it's essentially a it's a high-pressure air hose that pushes earth away, exposes roots, and would allow an arborist to make a clean cut. Well, first of all, it would make an arborist allowed to see where roots are. In the case of planting trees which are not a wall and they can be moved, it would be my suggestion, as indicated in the condition, to move plants to where roots aren't. One of the concessions that the applicant made was to remove many of the trees along the property line and replace them with shrubs, because shrubs have a narrower root ball and a shallower root ball, and it would be easier for them to be located between roots of existing trees.
But taking the trees out is what he's talking about. You have a forest of trees, half on their property, half on our property. They take all those trees out, if they take the roots out, that's as disturbing as putting in a whole new tree.
Nobody's doing that.
There's
77 trees being
within
taken
5
out.
feet of the property line. on the
77
development
trees
site,
are coming out.
And they have to pull them
I
up.
don't,
That's a construction activity, that's all I'm saying. And then,
We're just asking.
and digging a hole to put in a shrub or a tree is a construction
It's our trees.
activity. And I think Mr. Hammer last time defined line of limit of work as nothing, it was a sacred line, nothing happens beyond it.
It's as dangerous taking out the tree as it is putting in the tree.
So all I'm saying is that I'm trying to clarify the definition of what limited work is and get a consensus. And my interpretation.
All right, I want to hear what you have to
I
say.
just want to say from the standpoint of tree removal, when trees are removed, yeah. Sorry. From the standpoint of tree removal, just from a process clarification, a tree, an existing tree is not taken out with its entire root system. What happens is it is flush cut to the ground, and then in a lot of these situations, we wouldn't even need to grind the stump because it's there's nothing else being put there. I mean, there's
Yeah,
not
planting's
building
going
wrapping.
on
Plantings all-
retaining wall. planting.
Right, but when
You
you have,
described it
when you
earlier.
have a stump left that's this big around, it doesn't have to be removed necessarily.
A lot of trees, I'm not sure where you're gonna put all these plants.
So
If you have all
if
stump.
the stump is removed, though, it is ground in place, so
Okay,
you
that's
don't
fair.
extend into the structural roots out beyond it, which would therefore be disturbing roots of other trees adjacent. So I just wanted to clarify that the description as though the whole tree gets pulled out with its entire root system, it would damage everything around it. That's not how that.
But nonetheless, we're just trying to clarify that is a construction activity. Cutting a tree down is a construction activity. And so all I'm saying is that the limit
All right.
of work,
So, what do you
no,
want
it's
me
not
to do?
semantics,
I
because
would
it
like
has to
to
do with
get a sense
construction
from where they
activity
are.
Okay,
closer to the
yeah.
other trees.
Got it.
Done.
Thank you. You want to ask a question?
Mr. Engler, we're just wondering if you guys have come to any kind of
Well, I'm
consensus.
supposed to, I'm waiting to hear from you what you want to impose on us. Then I can give you an answer.
All right, so what?
We're waiting on to say.
So I think Al
Alan's
feels,
position is
he's
your
feeling
position.
strong. Let's hear what Al wants to say, and then you talk.
I want to impose a condition that the developer meet the setback of 25 feet at unit 4A and 3A.
Can we see that on the, this is pretty important to all of us. Can we put a slide up that has
The one that's closer in.
Who would want?
Let me put on the dimensions, that's the one. So 4A and 3A are these two. This is the setback line.
And you have less concern
With the other four?
I do have less concern with the other.
because,
The other four units that encroach are units 6A, 7C, 8A,
Can we
9A,
get a
and
picture up
10B.
here? Does anybody have a picture? This is like the heart of the issue for us.
and why are you less concerned about those or more concerned about the ones?
I'm less, well, I'm more
No,
concerned.
wait. I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is really essential.
What's
This
your
is the
meeting?
heart of the issue. Could we get a picture of the units up with the numbers if we're talking about which units are going to be protected?
I don't
We're
believe you
all
have that
butters and
with you. Do you have it
neighbors
with
here.
you?
Does anybody have a
We have all the
picture?
units here. If you describe the ones you want, I'll highlight them.
Sure.
on-
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sorry to interrupt, Al.
I'm more concerned about 3A and 4A because of the proximity of the wall to the property line and because of the proximity of the current existing house on that side of the property to the new structures,
Which house are we talking about?
3A and 4A.
No, which house?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you said
The
it-
existing house, NF Malone on C3. I'm looking at C3.
It's this house, correct?
Yes,
That's not next to 4A and 3A.
I said proximity to 4A and 3A.
Yeah.
And the reason for not being concerned, or less concerned, and therefore, when you say you're less concerned, are you willing to waive the setback on the remaining 4?
Probably.
The 4 that, the other 4 that don't comply with the setback requirements are the 3 going in from Hallett Hill, which would be 7C, 8A, and 9A.
Right.
off are they?
7C
17 feet right
should
here.
meet 2 setbacks, right? The street
Correct.
setback and the lot line setback.
Right.
And 8A and 9A violate the 25-foot setback from.
This violates the road setback, these violate the property.
Well, actually, 7C violates 2 setbacks. The front, which it's only 45 feet instead of 65, and it's 17 instead of 25. 8A is 19 feet from the property line. 9A is 19 feet from the property line, and 10B is 24 feet from the property line, I believe.
Yeah, and 6A?
And 6A is 17 feet. 6A is up at the top,
Yep.
is 17 feet from the property line.
That house there is above number 26, the number 26. I don't know. That one.
What are the other conditions?
Do you want me to speak to this condition? or do you
Sure.
want me to- Okay, so I'm coming at this differently, I'm afraid, in terms of the waiver that, or the requirement that Alan is requesting. He's requesting that rather than the 20 feet that's proposed on the new plan, he wants it to comply with the town's requirement of 25 feet. I am less concerned about the 5 feet than I am about the possibility of losing all of the hard work that we've done over the past 7 months. I'd like to finish my comments. The way I understand it, and if the engineers can correct me if I'm wrong, units 3A and 4A are below the house that is now formerly of Malone. The grading for those 2 houses, it's back to that question, I'm inartfully saying it, but the point that I'm trying to make is 3A and 4A are,
Malone's at a higher grade than 3A and 4A.
And 4.
right,
Yeah.
it's at a higher grade. And Malone would have fencing, shrubs, and the houses below them. And also not next to it. In fact, I think Unit 5A, which complies with its setback, is right next to Malone. But that complies with the setback. So to be concerned with houses that are further, I don't know what's north and south here, I'm sorry. I guess that's
West.
west. The houses that are further west from Malone, for 5 feet to put the rest of our work in jeopardy, I just don't see it. I would be inclined to grant the waiver because I don't think 5 feet in this area, when we're okay with waivers for 5 other units, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like the wall and the elevation of the new houses will be such that the Malones will be shielded from 4A and 3A, and if anything, the problem that the people that they're gonna see will be 5A, which complies with the setback. I don't see what we're gaining by 5 feet. I guess my bottom line is, I don't see what we're gaining by 5 feet when they're agreeing to, I'm assuming, I mean, we haven't gone through all the conditions, but if they're agreeing to all these other conditions in terms of trees and in terms of buffers and in terms of the engineering, I would be inclined to grant the waiver for those 2 units.
So I would be
we're all
It would be
individuals.
nice to know if it can be moved. And whether it's economically
Okay.
feasible
That's fine.
to move it.
It's
You know,
fine.
I agree
you
that
know,
it's.
fine. That's why it's a majority. I mean, I'm telling you my concern.
Well, I guess I would have more of a concern about your concern if I thought that that's the way the process was actually going to play out. But I think your ultimate concern is not being triggered by what I'm suggesting that we do here today.
Well, I think the ultimate concern that I have is no matter what we do, it's going to get appealed anyways
Right, but we can't.
By who? By who? By who? By who?
by the neighborhood.
No, no, but you've
So-
got to be more aggressive than you're being.
Okay, let me ask you this. So you're telling me if we get those 5 feet
No,
for
that's
those
not
two-
going to be enough.
But why does that matter tonight?
matter? You guys have
Well, she's worried about appeal.
Because I know that even if we're,
don't know.
We're not going to lose the work that's been done over 7
That's true.
months.
oh,
by-
But Alan, I have to say, what you're gaining, he's going to agree to what you said tonight.
He meant.
That's not a very aggressive move. I plead with you to consider removing 2 units. I plead with you to consider that. That's going to be painful for him, and he's going to have to make some serious adjustments. He's not going to agree to that
That's why I
tonight.
say they're gonna
But
appeal
removing
it.
2 units relaxes this whole thing.
I don't
You
think
lose
we can,
everything.
I don't think we
Lose
can
everything.
impose.
Right, so-
that's not going to
What's
be a
that?
condition that we're
I
going
don't
to
think we
impose.
can impose
Yes,
that
you
as a
can.
condition.
Yes, you can.
I don't think we're going
If
to
it
impose that
addresses the local
condition.
concern, you can pull that
If
2
it's
units.
if it links
Or
to
you
the
can do
local-
it.
Well,
you can
you've
do
got
it
2
indirectly.
members here saying that we're not going to impose a condition reducing it from 10 to 8 units. So that tells me that all of the work that we have done for 7 months is going to go away.
Understanding that, Connie. Connie, you're not going to lose it. You go through a pro forma, and you can retain all that work you had at the end. Your fork
He
in the
doesn't have
road
a pro
comes
forma
later.
if he stumbled on one.
Well, wait a minute. So
Mr.
the-
Angle.
I did
but-
stumble
but
on one, and I
also
found it, so I know it.
No, you don't know
Yeah.
a thing about it, Donald.
I don't feel that,
So the
I don't
fork in the
feel-
road is ahead of you, not tonight.
yeah, but I don't feel that the reduction from 10 to 8, although it would be nice, I don't think that that's something we could ask for,
You can.
but we
You
can
can-
ask
You
for.
can do it. Ask Alana, ask Alana. Ask Alana.
You do not have the ability to do a pro forma simply to see if the project would be economic or rendered uneconomic simply
Right.
because there's a reduction from 10 to 8. What you have the ability to do potentially is to say that there is a concern that you have about the project, there's something that you don't want to waive, there's a bylaw, there's a regulation, there's some concern that you have about the project that you want mitigated, and then you ask for it, and if they say no, it would render the project uneconomic, then you have that
Well, I think-
reviewed. And if it resulted, if what you asked for resulted in a reduction in density, because that's the penultimate result,
Right,
but you
well,
don't
then-
know that
Alana,
until.
Right, so
I'll
that's-
challenge
that's
that,
not-
Alana. I've seen conditions written for 40Bs that specify a reduction in units. I've seen it. But you can't go directly to it. You have to say, for the sake of the
That's what I
setbacks and
just said.
other local concerns.
Well, that's what I
you can
just said.
specify 8 units.
That's what
You
she
can
just
actually
I don't care how
specify.
many units there are. It's like, we're gonna try to make
What I'm
it,
saying is that you cannot say, we want to see pro forma to reduce from 10 to 8. That's not allowed. The case law is clear.
You
Cannot be
can't
done.
go directly there, but you can take a 2-step process.
And that's what I've said.
But you've
Right.
just asked us to impose the condition that they
I don't
reduce
want
the
it.
number of units. We can't just say
It's a
that.
2-step process.
The end result is the same. If it comes
Exactly.
down to 8, you don't
Exactly.
go to court.
It's, even if you impose the setback that you're talking about, 25.
For those
20
two houses.
On those 2 units.
Yeah.
That would not preclude the development team from looking at an alternative geometry for the structure or a taller structure or something like that. They might still come back with 10 units. It might be a 3-story house and they
Yeah.
might ask for a
yeah,
height
yeah,
waiver.
yeah,
Okay.
Well,
yeah,
that would be
So they-
substantially
they
changed.
could- They could do something like that.
yeah, that would
Yep.
be worth considering.
They could make a unit a duplex, or they
Right.
could make multiple units a
Yeah.
duplexes.
That's
There's
correct.
lots of different things.
And the 8
I think those would be substantial changes.
Making it a duplex isn't so
But-
bad
but
because you have.
I don't think that
So-
triggers a review of, you're again trying to get back
Yeah,
to
I
the,
mean-
The project eligibility.
yes.
Right.
And the project eligibility letter isn't going to think that changing 10 units to maybe a variation of the footprint but a height is going to trigger a review of the project
I'm not trying to
eligibility.
go there. That's okay.
8 units also retains the 2 affordable units.
So I think
That's
the.
not-
At a
That
higher
would be a
It's-
substantial
it's-
change.
We'd
I
also
didn't
plead
see
for
that.
the setback along Howlett. That house
I
is
didn't
really
see
going to
that.
be looming. That house is really going to be looming right on the road.
Yeah.
The markings that Jeff and I were disagreeing about when we were there, they were marking that as the building, and it turns out they left off the front porch from those markings when we were walking the site, and they left out the bay window as well. So you had the impression it didn't loom so much. It actually loomed 7 feet closer to the road than they presented at the sidewalk.
The other conditions, do you have a copy, Mr. Engler, of the draft? Okay. Did you want to go through each of the conditions? How do you want to do this?
So if
I
there-
don't need all the conditions that have no, it's hard to know that, what says an economic consequence or not. If you want me to model something, you gotta kind of give me the significant ones, and the other ones, well, we'll look at them, but they come along.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I think the question that's being asked, Mr. Engler, is whether you've gone through the conditions in the draft decision and whether you've identified any of those proposed draft conditions that you say would render the project uneconomic. I think you identified one with respect to the 100,000 escrow.
Oh, that was,
I think it
yeah.
was condition 22.
Yeah, but I didn't look at it, you didn't look at it with that in mind, like what renders the project uneconomic. Because we only had it for 2 days. And then we had it vetted with Steve Schwartz, but very quickly, so we really need time to look at that and say, are there conditions in here that have economic consequences? But if you tell me tonight setbacks, I know that is economic consequences. If there's anything else, I'm just looking to see how we respond, and when you tell me, I can
Alright.
respond.
So does the front, do you have an issue with that front setback?
On Holly Hill?
Yeah.
8 units pulls the line of work, the limit of work interiorly, which has been discussed forever in these discussions in regard to the trees. There's still
It's
18
the-
trees that have been identified by both arborists as having significant risk of damage.
No, they haven't. Not by our office.
I think this
By your
is,
arborists.
Not by Nelson.
your attorney,
There's-
Mr.
He's a landscape artist.
Schwartz. I think I have
Yeah, what he said.
what he sent.
We haven't even talked to him about it. We just sent it off
okay.
because it's legal stuff.
I'm just,
I haven't looked at it. either.
But those
he's
aren't
just
con-
talking about
Those are what you're allowed to do and not do by basically by the.
That case, the Amesbury case.
That really isn't condition related.
okay. So probably would
I
want
haven't
to,
seen any, frankly, I haven't
All right,
seen
then
any
we need to-
conditions in there
we need
other
to-
than the 100,000
that was,
stand out to me. That's something I can't live with. You know, but this is
Okay.
new information in terms of the setbacks.
so the other waiver requests, Alan, did you have any other issues with any of the other waiver requests?
yeah.
Maybe
Well,
that's
wait a
what we need
minute.
to look at.
Well, there was one, I know there was one thing, it wasn't a waiver request, they wanted a sign.
Oh, sign, right. Is it
Forget
in
the
here?
sign. I don't know.
There was some talk about having a sign at the entrance, and I guess Winifred is saying no sign.
They wanted to sign so we can market it by saying.
Well, if it's like
look
a
to the right
street-
tree and let it come in.
Well, I would expect the.
Having a
it
for
depends.
sale sign is not the same as having
Sales
a,
sign, we're talking about
No, the-
identification sign.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think you could, it's like a street sign is one thing, but to have a big thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
Well, we
such
can
as
put
a
sign on the
village.
wall. We don't need a freestanding sign. We want to identify what the village is. We're not talking about a for sale sign. I don't know what the condition is.
Do you know what number that was?
No, it was something that they were thinking about doing.
No sign.
How about,
That's right.
good point, I'm getting, you're right, I'm sorry, I'm getting caught up in.
No, you're just asking me, were there any conditions? I'm just trying to remember what there was.
Okay,
I think the garbage.
We agreed on something.
all right, so there are 10, 17,
What page is she
It's
at?
at the very end. 17 waivers that appear to be at the end of the decision. And I just want to know from you, I know you haven't looked at this a lot, if there was any, basically, these are what you submitted
Go along with those plans.
that go along, I don't know if these are updated to the,
Yeah, we did, we updated.
these
the
are,
plans.
oh, I know you updated the plans.
But
I don't
you
know
might-
if
No,
the
we updated the
waivers.
waivers, you guys, you re-looked at these waivers.
So the last set of waivers that we received
Are not in here?
Yes, they are.
Oh.
They are.
The last set?
I thought we turned in a
There
set.
was
You
a
did,
new waiver
you did.
last in the
Says up
packet.
to 23.
In the last
That-
packet.
Exactly, that should tie
The
into
last,
plans.
if the last one was the last packet we received, then yes, these waivers are up to date.
It had a waiver.
I believe it.
Yes, they do.
So,
Okay,
all right, so
so then, our,
personally, I think the retaining wall is destructive. I don't have any problem with it.
okay. Do you want to just keep it as a structure and then say that it's
Yeah, here.
waiving?
Yeah, or say if it is
Yeah,
a structure.
it's definitely, I used it, yeah.
Or say if it is a structure, it's waived.
Okay.
No, more. Set.
Yeah, I have it. If it was in the package that I received
Yeah, but I want
earlier.
to show it to Carlos to see.
Okay. So then it appears the only waiver that's in contention is the setback,
Oh,
which
here,
is,
this one.
We never changed the date on it, though, it still says August.
yes, it's,
I think it should be more, it should be 5.
I think it's 2, but let's go
That's
look at
because
that.
somebody had said that, but I think it's not, I think it's too short.
I'll get to that number. I don't know it off the top of my head. I think I know this by now. What number, what page are you on that has
I'm
that?
on 25, but that's not.
No, the road. I mean, the, trees. The tree monitors. Oh, bottom of page 22, number 2. That talks about the amount in escrow.
Yeah.
We proposed 100,000, and the board and I are talking about,
The period
how many
of time.
years?
Yeah, not 2 years, it should be like 5 years, something like that. The amount is.
The,
I agree that the amount probably
The
should
amount is
come
probably-
down.
Well, it's very high,
Yeah.
given that we changed the plans.
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
higher than last
Yeah.
time.
what amount do you
I agree that-
propose?
Well, we said 20 to 25, we want to keep it 5 years. I mean, our arborists will tell you how long it takes to really know whether things are taken or not.
5 years?
Yeah.
Are we gonna look for
5 years
neighborhood
is good.
feedback before you finalize this, or are you guys
No.
just gonna have the conversation with him?
I'm not looking for.
I mean, there are two sides to the party here, there is a negotiation process, and I hear it all one way and not the other.
Okay.
So, did you change it to 5?
I changed it to 5. And the amount, what did we decide on the amount?
About 50.
50?
I don't, I would have to look at the thing and think about that. What do you think? I agree that
We
100
don't
is.
I think
we get
100
it based
is
on our
too
plan,
much.
but we're willing to put up something. Our lawyer says it's, Alana can answer this, he thinks it's a private matter between neighbors, and it shouldn't be a zoning board communication.
Well, no, no.
Jeff already agreed to
It's my
escrow some
understanding that this was
amount.
something that was offered by the.
Yeah, it was. It had been
Offered by
offered,
the applicant.
but it had been offered by the,
Oh,
under
he's
the
too
old
young, he
plan.
doesn't waste
It had been offered under the old plan before the wall was moved.
Yeah.
So I
Right,
do
right,
think
right.
that
So
there's.
the wall's moved, and so I think
We've got
we should
shrubs going. We've taken
stay
a
with
lot
it,
of
but
them.
it should be a different
We
number.
live with 25.
Why don't you put 50 just for now?
We're putting
So,
50 for now, and we'll think about it.
Shouldn't it be based on the
We also have to be
the value
involved
of
in
the
the
tree?
decision.
Yes, it should be, but
Can't
what,
just say we've given it up and then we have no role in it, so if somebody's calling for something to be fixed.
Yeah, no,
We'll
I
have to
think
write
that
some language that says we're
F2
gonna-
probably needs to be worked a bit. The decision incorporates the Barbara's
Where are the-
tree protection. Okay, and,
how?
okay. And it also, sorry, it also incorporates Dave Hawkins' valuations of the trees. Maybe that's where we can figure out what number
Right.
makes sense.
Well, what, in the report, we recommended that money goes into escrow
Maybe you can-
for the maintenance. Because in the last meeting, the neighbors were saying they're not
of the value of the tree, the replacement value of the tree. They're more concerned with keeping the trees. So to ramp up the maintenance program and extend it to 5 years, I was suggesting to Jeff that the escrow money be spent on maintenance and care of the existing trees, rather than thinking about the
Oh,
potential
replacement.
replacement,
Yeah.
which,
Is there different numbers of that than replacement of trees? You still
Yes,
think
Dave.
that's a big number?
yeah.
It's a different.
Does the
Well,
It's a
we would-
different-
Yeah, I think we would have to talk to somebody about that.
Okay.
It's a different concept.
Right, Yeah. okay.
So, do you have any conditions for construction?
And you heard conditions tonight. Did the new letters go in?
No, I don't, nothing that came in today has gone in.
So you would add those.
I need to, oh, Mr. Hammers, I think they're already in there. Hold on.
Never mind, this isn't a final decision.
No, I know.
No,
We're
it's
trying
not
to-
at all. We're trying to give you feedback.
the opportunity to understand what changes you need to consider,
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
if they're economic or not.
So, Bob, are you going to give an extension tonight to a new date, so you can go back and consider
As
this and
soon
then
as
come back?
as soon as they tell me what they're after, I might say, hey, that's fine. I haven't heard it. I haven't heard an informal majority say what it is.
I understood.
Otherwise, we'll be here.
I lost my train of thought. What were we just talking about? It's getting late. What was I just looking for?
The town's arborist's conditions.
Thank you. Yeah, Nelson Hammers. Oh, that's on page 17, so I think, Nelson, have you seen these? Have you seen the draft?
no, I haven't.
Okay. So I think number 16 on page 17 needs to be updated to reflect Nelson's recent
Why don't
letter.
you just incorporate it?
Oh, yeah, so Rob wants to put in engineering conditions. That makes sense.
Okay.
He should look at,
Rob, have you get a chance to review that?
I haven't seen that, but I mean, most of the conditions that I would put in are things that I've referenced in previous reports.
The overhead plan is in there.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that yet.
I think I've incorporated them all, but he should probably take a look at it. I mean, I tried to pull together. And then, are you going to comment on their attorney, Schwartz, is that right? I'm sorry, I keep forgetting his name. Your attorney
Steve
is?
Schwartz.
Have you seen Mr. Schwartz's edits,
Um,
where he references the Amesbury case?
Yes, and so go back and look at that. I haven't looked at it in detail.
Okay.
Certainly the Amesbury case says what it says.
Okay,
There are certain things that if challenged, can't do. Not sure you really want to go to the point of objecting to what's in there.
Well, I don't know, those are his comments, we haven't talked about them, they don't affect the pro forma, so
okay.
that could be left to discussion.
Do you have any objection to my calling Steve and talking to
So
Steve?
what? Oh, no, I'll look at it, just don't have him charge us.
May I ask for legal point?
yeah, it's better.
Madam Chair?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to read this thing.
May I ask a legal point?
Sure.
We presented previously about the Massachusetts rule and, you know, all the 4 statutes or the 4 laws that pertain to damaging someone else's property. And both arborists have identified, I think at last count, it was at least 18 trees that are at significant risk of damage from construction activity. So that's a state statute. And I would think that that overrides, there's nothing in the 40B statute that says the developer has the right to damage someone else's property. That's a fundamental principle of law. So here we have both the arborist, we have 2 arborists who agree that there is significant damage, there can be significant damage to a butter's trees.
Well, the arborist that you're,
Wait, so he's asking her.
So my response would be
Okay.
that certainly there are a number of statutes, the one that you cited and another one, and case law under them with respect to the private property rights of adjacent property owners as to how they will proceed with respect to a tree, one that's entirely on one property but would move over, or if it straddles and so on, and there are many scenarios. And in the 40B context, the job and the jurisdiction of this board is to look at the application for relief, the specific permits that are being asked for, whether it's subdivision control, zoning, and so on, sewer, water, whatever it might be. But the issue of an impact with regard to the roots underneath the ground, that would be in the main a private matter between private parties unless there's a specific provision, a local regulation, a local bylaw that speaks to it. And I think that what Member Rose has indicated is that that's one of his concerns for this setback relates to the trees and the disturbance of the tree roots because of the retaining wall. So to the extent that there is a waiver requested from this board, from the application of a local provision, then that is within their jurisdiction, but only in relation to that. And that's why I think the board is zeroing in on the side setbacks with relation to where the trees are.
Given that, then the question I pose is that there are trees along on the Hallett Hill end of this that are, here, that the arborist has classified as having at least moderate to high risk of construction damage.
Which arborist is that?
Both arborists.
Who's both?
It's moderate to high
Moderate to
risk
high
based
risk.
on the proximity of the house location after construction. And then with our recommendations, we proposed cabling 2 meters together to mitigate it and stabilize
Yes.
the condition to reduce the risk.
Yes, yes.
And
I'm not giving you permission to do
Yeah,
that.
we don't agree that there's a substantial risk.
She just agreed to it right there. She just said moderate, but go ahead.
Well, it's written in the report, and this is not, I'm not making this up. If you look at what's written in her report, and it was confirmed by the arborist who walked the site with us yesterday. So we have, it's not here anymore. We have, there's a likelihood of damage to trees here and here. There are still 2 large trees on the Adler property line that are listed as having moderate to high risk of damage, even with the new retaining wall, according to our arborist. And then you have 15 and 14. I think those were listed as moderate to high risk.
No, those weren't.
I think they were.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm quite positive they were. And so the wall wasn't changed there. The only place the wall was changed here was because there was a row of 7 or 8 trees right in front of Barbara Adler's house that, this was a good thing to do, that they moved the wall in to accommodate Barbara because those trees are the only screen she has between her and the property. And so I think the point I'm making is that by bringing them, and again, I go back to the definition of limited work. When you put a plant on the ground, you have to grade around the plant to get that, I dig a hole, the dirt goes on the side of the hole, I put the plant in, I take a rake, and I rake the ground around it to throw back in the hole. That's grading. I mean, it's backyard grading, but nonetheless, it's a grading activity. And so,
All right, so
I'm concerned about the limit of work is really the
Yeah,
property
all right.
line, is what I'm concerned about. And then I would push the argument to say, the solution to that is to pull everything in, away from the perimeter, as you folks are suggesting. And the perfect compromise is an 8-unit development.
we're not going to.
Because you
All right, so
get
I-
8 units and you still retain the 2
Okay,
affordable.
so I think that,
You have another comment?
yeah, I know, but I just want to say something. I would agree with you that this is worth looking at because of the wall. Not that.
That's what I propose.
Yeah, okay. As I've thought about it, I agree. In the back?
If I may, Jim Polando, 242 Merriam Street. I'd like to ask that some consideration be given to specific conditions in the report, the draft report. If you don't mind if I go through a few of these?
All right, just quickly, please.
I'll
It's
try.
getting late.
On page 14, number 5, the hours of operation, I question, number 1, why we're extending the hours beyond the standard Weston bylaw by allowing 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Weston bylaw is 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. daily,
What
Monday
is-
through Friday.
What is the, say again, the times that you propose? What does the bylaw say?
The bylaw says 7 AM to 6:30 PM.
We'll just check it,
7 AM to 6:30 PM.
instead of 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Instead of 7.
It also said permitted on Saturdays from 7 AM to 5 PM, provided however the activity is limited to interior work only. The stipulation you have in number 5 does not agree with that. And I ask that you reconsider that because it's punitive to the neighbors to allow work in hours that we don't normally allow work, and I don't see any reason to do that. Also, in your language, you indicated that no work shall be allowed on site on Sundays or holidays. Well, on site, does that mean they can do work in the building? Because I can read this that they can do work inside of a building if the building is partially constructed on a Sunday.
I don't think that was the intention.
All right,
So,
well,
could
anyway, you can
If you wouldn't
clarify.
mind reviewing the language?
Yeah.
Here's the bylaw page.
Oh, I appreciate that, thank you.
I mean, to that point, the developer already agreed to abide by all the conditions that are in the bylaws with respect to construction.
Yeah,
Jeff
well,
had agreed to that.
But
I don't want to
anything you
have
have
this
written, we should
contradict.
have.
Yeah, sure, no, I
agree.
appreciate that, thank you.
Great, thank you, no problem. Page 16, 16A, and I don't want to get into this at limited work again, because now I'm completely confused. My issue with limited work, being in the construction industry all my life, the issue is that you have heavy excavations, then you have planting and fine grading that can go right to the perimeter. So I
Yeah, we should
request
just
that we
clarify.
make a limit of excavation or a
Yeah.
limit of general work or whatever it specifically is, and put the fence on the limit of work line, not beyond it. This language says somewhere beyond it. I think it should
Right,
be on the
right,
line,
I
so in
agree
case
with
a
that.
heavy equipment operator hits it, he knows right away, he's hit the line, he can't go any further.
Right.
Okay, so I
So I asked for,
think,
say,
I think
Justin-
your letter addresses that.
This is
Doesn't your
just
letter
inside the
address
Property
it?
line, which I
A
think the
previous
language
letter
is.
addressed it, and I corrected it because putting the fence directly on the limit of excavation would not provide proper footing for the fence itself, and once excavation started near a footing for a
All right, we'll deal with
fence,
that.
Can
But
you
this says just
propose,
inside the
can you
property line.
propose some language
Yeah,
for that?
propose some decent
That
language
clarifies
we-
limit of work, limit of
protects-
excavation?
To me, it protects a lot of the trees, because we're talking about how sensitive the trees are, and if we allow this, because this language
so
right now says toward the property, just inside the property line, that means they could, by mistake, dig too close to a tree and destroy it before anyone
Okay,
gets
Okay.
around.
well, all right, so,
Yeah,
but I think
that's-
we all know what
Yeah,
what
no,
is
I-
meant.
Thank you.
Just
I think Nelson will help propose something.
Page 19. Newly created condominium association, number 10, I'm sorry, shall be responsible for maintaining landscaping. I'd like to add, ask that we add,
Number 10
language
and
that says all
19.
utilities.
It doesn't.
That does not say all utilities in here. And they're all utilities, it's all private.
That's beyond, that's beyond
I'm trying to catch up. What is the?
He's on page 19, number 10.
Number 10.
Condo
He just
association.
wants a condo association
It
to
says
maintain
responsible for maintaining
utilities.
landscaping, responsible for trash removal, snow removal,
Well, they will when
biannual
they take
inspection, the maintenance of catch basins, dry wells.
What's your issue?
He wants to have
I
all
want to
utilities.
say all utilities are on site. Why aren't they responsible for all
What's your
utilities
issue
on
with
site?
utilities?
I think it's an issue that's, ties back to the case. We're gonna do it, it doesn't make any sense not to. I don't know why.
He
it's-
just
I've never seen
he just
objection
wants
to
it,
it.
he just
No,
wants it
it's just
included.
that I don't think you have any right to be telling our condo association what is responsible for.
It's on their property.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have to maintain it.
All right.
Not if it's not.
It's not anything we're
going.
gonna.
Page number 23 at the bottom, D, 4C.
Sorry, I lost track. Page what?
23 at the bottom.
23, number 4,
Madam Chair,
C.
can I just ask, what change were you asking for on page 19?
All
Adding all
utilities.
all
Just adding utilities
Yep.
to paragraph 10.
The last line says, all sumps are to be cleaned once, is that meant to be once per quarter? Or I'm not sure what that meant.
All sumps are to be cleaned once 1/4 of their working depth is full of sediment and debris.
Once?
Once 1/4 of their working depth. Does that not make sense?
Okay, so somebody has to monitor that, right? Okay, no, that makes sense. Good.
Does that not even apply?
I've never seen it before.
No, that is applicable there, and Carlos and I have gone back and forth on this. There should be a stormwater operation and maintenance plan that's
Well, that's
submitted to the
required,
board,
yes.
And that O&M plan will
Yep.
then specify how often the sumps are inspected and cleaned and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So,
Make reference to the O&M.
So to that point, the specific individual maintenance schedules could be removed and just reference the O&M plan to be submitted, which would identify the very specific requirements.
I agree with that.
I don't have a problem with that.
Have they submitted one already?
No, that's one of the, I think that's one of the conditions that they will submit an O&M plan.
I think it's in here, but, yeah,
Page 26.
that probably makes more sense for the engineers to figure out what makes sense. What page you on?
26.
Yes?
Item number 16. Distance requirements for the septic system. It says over section 2.5 requires a 20-foot setback, separation from the foundation walls and footings. This is not a local bylaw. This is a Title
This is
V
the-
requirement.
No, that one is a local
That's a
bylaw that
local
we're asking
bylaw.
for relief. Title V is 10 feet. So that's the
Title
request.
V for a foundation is 20.
Slab on grade.
No, this says
It's only
foundation
10.
wall, doesn't it?
No, because it's,
It's a
From a
request.
foundation wall or footing. That's what it says.
which one are you reading?
Number
This-
16.
Number 16.
These were the waivers that were requested, is it not? Foundation wall or footing?
That's
Is
the
that?
language the town uses, and the DEP requirement is that you have a 10-foot setback,
From a slab,
which is,
not a foundation wall. a
That's
slab.
what, oh,
No,
No, but
garage
they're
slab.
asking for it to be waived.
Where they are using an alternative technology, that provision in Title V was struck in the general use permit for the specific technology that they're
Title
applying.
5 lists 20 feet.
I know our Title V lists 20 feet, but that provision in Title V is overridden by the general condition approval for the technology that they're applying. Title V also allows DEP to issue
What-
permits for specific technology.
Wait a minute, I think maybe he's thinking that it's a grammatical question you're asking, or a clarity.
No,
Or is he
asking-
they're asking for relief from 20 feet from a foundation wall.
Under the local bylaw, under the
Under the local bylaw.
He's
regulation,
asking that
not
under
under
local
Title
Board of
V.
Health reg.
Title
not-
5 says.
But
in
they're not
the
asking,
table.
they're not asking or getting a permit under Title V. They're only looking for a waiver from the
The local bylaw.
regulation.
In other
We're not
words,
waiving the DEP regulations.
Board of Health can't
We're-
issue them a permit if it doesn't comply with Title V.
Right.
So is this language okay or not okay? Rob,
It's okay because they're asking for a waiver from the local Board of Health regs.
that's what I
So-
thought,
so
because
you're okay then.
we're not waiving the DEP rules.
You can't.
Nor do I want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
My last issue is, number one, thank you for item 15. I think the language is very good about garbage disposals and the fact that it has to be a deed restriction, it has to be, and all the potential buyers have to be noticed, so that's a deed restriction. I ask that you consider a 3-bedroom statement the same, to make it a deed restriction, and that all potential buyers be told that these are limited to 3 bedrooms only.
Except for the
Except for the
existing,
existing house, it's a 4-bedroom, correct.
how do you feel about that?
Our system allows for that, right? I mean, I can understand that if you.
it does not.
It does not.
It does
It
not.
allows a 31
Two
bedrooms.
bedrooms and one living.
And I think that should be a deed restriction.
Well, the conditions of the permit run with the land, I don't know if the deed restriction is more stringent than that.
It is more stringent because the developer can return, unlike with a special permit or subdivision or variance, the developer does have the ability to come back and even after the appeal period has run, to ask for a substantial change, or even a substantial change, and to argue, for that restriction to go away. So deed restriction